Hey, how you doing? Welcome back to the show. We've got another EQ video for you today, just dialing in loads of tones, and this one's from Empress Effects, and it's the Para EQ Deluxe MkII, and we'll just go and check it out. So this is the deluxe variant that's got loads of features, and it's a little bit intimidating at first, but we'll go through it. It's actually really simple, easy to use, and dials in loads of tones. But before we get too far into it, I'll just quickly run through the gear that I'm using just to save some confusion with anyone. I'm using my Jackson RR5 Japan with the Seymour Duncan TB4 and SH2 pickups in it. That's going into the front of my Mesa Mark 525, where we're using the Mark IIC Plus channel, which is this lower bank of EQ. I'm using the sliders, but only to balance out the tone. It's slightly swept, but it's a pretty basic tone, and this is the raw tone. You can hear it's slightly swept, but there's nothing too fancy about it. It really is just about the EQ and how we're sculpting tones today. But the amp is going through the 2 notes Torpedo Captor X, which is emulating my 1936V cabinet over there, the Marshall cabinet, the 212. And I usually have an SM57 about an inch or two just off the side of the dust cap. And that's really just tuned in to emulate that same sound, and the signal from that's going through my Focusrite Claret 2 pre-USB, which is just going straight into Logic, where there's no production at all going on, there's no compression, nothing, and it's all about the EQ. So the Para EQ Deluxe is actually going through the effects loop of the Mark 525. I find that EQs through the effects loop are just really powerful. They don't react like they do in a front end. In a front end of an amp, they tend to just boost certain frequencies of your guitar. It's like you're manipulating your guitar to sound like something else going into the front end. But going through the effects loop, they're really powerful, and you're pretty much getting the end signal from the amplifier itself, and you're just boosting certain frequencies, and you're really manipulating the tone, so the bass will just come through, and anything that you cut or boost will actually come through dramatically, whereas it just doesn't do that in the front end. So just a really quick rundown of the EQ. It's a little bit intimidating at first, but it's pretty simple once you get the hang of it. We've just got the standard Q adjustments for each band at the top, which narrow or widen the Q for each of the frequencies. And then it comes to the frequency, and this actually just pushes or pulls the frequency curve along the line. Then we've got the gain for each, just to raise and lower each of the curves. And then it comes down to these four, and these are really interesting. And it starts with the high pass filter, and this one actually means that it's letting all the bass frequencies through, but as you turn it up, it's like a gate is coming across and just cutting off all the bass frequencies at a threshold. And then we get to the low shelf filter, and this actually just filters everything from the 200 Hertz. It either boosts it or cuts it. And then we get to the high shelf filter, and this actually boosts or cuts everything around the 1K threshold. And then we get to the low pass filter at the end, and this is exactly the opposite of the high pass filter at the start, and this just cuts off all those high frequencies as you wind it down. And then you've got a cool feature down here, which I'd suggest only using through the front end of a guitar amp, where you can actually boost your guitar signal going into the front end, along with some of the frequencies here like a mid boost, and really cause things to break up and get a really distinct metal tone to it. But all that being said, let's just get started. Talk is cheap. I have dialed in some tones in preparation for this video, just so we can get some really cool tones straight off the bat. But the first one that I dialed in was an Anthrax tone. Even though we're going through the Mesa Boogie, it's not a Marshall at all, but I think just using this EQ, it can really just focus in on some of those frequencies. And I think that tone really shows off how you can develop that crunch on the top end just using some of those higher mids and the higher frequencies, and then just bring it down with that low shell filter right there on the top end and just cut it off like a brick wall exactly where you want. Just so that crunch on the top end's coming through, but just not too much of that sort of hair on the top. It's really cool. But next, this is a Rust in Peace style tone. We might tweak it a little bit more as we go and get it closer than what I did before. I think what's interesting about this tone is we've taken all these bass frequencies out of it, but we're using the low shell filter here and we're just sort of winding them up just to give you that bottom end, but it's really like a mid boost bottom end. And I think that captures that essence of that tone, whereas you've got that sort of a really grindy, thrashy top end on it, but it's just not too much in your face. It's just the right amount of mid sort of biting through. And one thing I noticed when I'm dialing this in, these 4 filters across the bottom for the shelves and things, they're just super sensitive, and the slightest adjustment with them, you're really just fighting different frequencies within the unit, but you can do that, and it's really cool. Anyway, next let's just try a Master of Puppets style tone. Might just cut those upper bass frequencies just slightly. And I find something that works getting this tone is you boost around the 3K mark for the upper end frequencies, which is here. And then you cut around the 1 to 2K range. I'll just sweep through the 2 ranges, but you'll just hear when it comes together and they're both in the right spot and it sounds right. They just work together and you get that really cool crunch going on. And that's really cool, but I think I'd get it a lot closer if I could just sit and tweak it and A and B it back and forth against the record. But hey, it's all in our memory and we sort of know it's the right tone. We know we're in the ballpark, but I'm really enjoying the fact that there's just so many different ways to go about dialing in that tone and just sort of getting the most out of the unit. As you've got the low pass filter right over here that you can just work with that, all the high end getting cut. You've got the high gain right here that you can just dial into the right amount. And then you've got this high shelf, which really just can boost things above the 1K, and just trying to find a balance and just working out and how they actually feed off each other and how they translate into a good tone. It's just really cool to work that out. But next we'll move on. I'll try and get the Black Album tone. Just bear with me for a tick. You really want to get that sizzle on the top end of this tone. But the lows are a little bit more percussive than that. You can usually hear. So I think for that we'll just... I'm using this high pass filter down the bottom and we're just going to gate off those low frequencies. I just want to try that tone with the MG81s, just see how it changes. That's actually really cool. I'm happy with that. And then back to the passive pickups, you can hear the difference. That's an awesome tone. I just want to see how the EQ goes though through the front end of the amp, just to work as like an OD boost or a mid boost or something of that matter. So I'll just reconfigure it now. We'll run it through the front end and we'll just see what it does. Just want to see what sort of boost you get out of this, whether it's a real sort of Gary Holt style nasty boost or... But anyway, I'll just engage this and we'll just see what it does. And there you go, it's still pretty diverse through the front end of the amp, just to really boost things up and get a really nasty sort of attack. But it's fantastic through the effects loop, but I think that's where it shines. You just got total control over all those frequencies. The pass filters and the shelf filters are really good. They're super sensitive, so watch out for that. But all in all, it's a fantastic EQ and it does exactly what you want it to do. It nailed that Black Album tone beautifully. But anyway guys, hope you really enjoyed that. Take care and I'll see you next time. Bye.